The rain came in gentle sheets that autumn morning, silvering the cobbled courtyard outside Storm's End, and casting a soft glaze upon the ancient basalt walls. Gendry watched it from the high window of the Lord's solar, arms folded across the plain wool of his doublet, mind wrestling with a dozen new burdens. The wooden shutters were flung wide to catch the sea salt perfume of the storm, and the dim light made the room seem carved from mist. Far below, workmen hammered at scaffolding, affixing fresh banners bearing the crowned stag that had been absent from these ramparts for decades. When he closed his eyes, the clang of hammers merged with the ringing in his ears. The endless echo of a smithy where he had once shaped horseshoes and breastplates, ignorant of bloodlines and thrones. He drew a steadying breath. Storm's End had always been a fortress of wind and stone, a place built to withstand siege by enemy or weather. Now it must weather something subtler, the fragile hope of peace. He reached for the letter sprawled across the oak table, ink still glistening beside the seal of Queen Sansa Stark. The Northern Queen's words were frank and spare. She accepted his proposal. A grand convocation of lords and small folk at Storm's End, not to quarrel over borders but to draft a charter guaranteeing trade routes, shared grain stores and sworn bonds of non-aggression. It was everything Gendry feared and craved, responsibility so vast it threatened to swallow him whole. Boots scuffed behind him, light but unhurried. Davos Seaworth entered, cloak beaded with rain, gray beard trimmed neat. "Your thoughts drift further each day, my lord," he said, using the title with a hint of amusement. "Storm's End's halls have grown quieter without your hammer." "I miss simpler work," Gendry murmured. "Iron speaks plain." "Men do not." Davos smiled, his weather-lined face softening. "Yet there are few men who understand iron and men both. Your charter is bold, but boldness forged the Baratheon name. Robert conquered with war. You might conquer with peace. Different strokes from the same hammer, aye?" Gendry traced the seashell sigil carved on the younger man's signet ring. No longer the red smith's rough mark he once bore in King's Landing, but a crowned stag encircled by an olive branch. He had designed it himself in the castle's forge, sleeves rolled high while sparks danced in his dark hair. "I'll need more than words on parchment," he said. "Grain flows scarce in the reach. Gold cloaks still prowl flea bottom for coin. And Dorne will come," Davos assured, setting a fresh parchment beside the Queen's letter. Princess Arianne accepted, though some of her own council scowls at the thought. She sees opportunity. Trade with the Marches will sweeten sour memories. The Lord of Storm's End exhaled as though the room itself were too narrow. So many threads to weave. Peace may snap at the first gust. "Now. Then we must braid it tight," Davos said. "You'll not stand alone. The small council in King's Landing values your steadiness, and the river lords trust your honesty. They remember a smith who rode back upriver to mend the prow of an orphaned fisherman, rather than polish courtly boots. Word travels." "Does honesty temper politics?" Gendry asked, dry. "In time," Davos answered. "And with ale." A laugh low and genuine startled from Gendry's chest. He turned again to the window where wind whipped a banner into view. A stag rampant, antlers bright, yet beneath it twined a green olive branch stitched by the castle's seamstresses. Robert's fury softened by peace. His eyes prickled at the sight. "Send ravens renewing invitations," he said, voice firm now. "The convocation begins on the new moon. We must prepare food stores. If peace is to grow, let it feast first." The small folk arrived first. Fishers from Shipbreaker Bay in patched cloaks, barley farmers from Tarth ferrying sacks of grain, septons eager to bless a new age. They came on foot or in creaking wagons, many carrying more hope than provisions. Gendry greeted them on the wide stone bridge leading up to the keep's inner gatehouse, refusing noble ceremony. He shook every hand, accepted loaves baked by widows, listened to petitions about levee repairs and missing calves. It exhausted him more than any day at Anvil, yet each night he collapsed into sleep with the surprising ease of a man who knew his purpose. On the first clear dawn of the new moon, banners brightened the horizon like blossoms. Stark dire wolf on grey silk. Tyrell rose budding anew after war. Martell's sunspear blazing above desert orange cloth. Even the golden lion of Lannister approached, borne by Lord Tyrion himself, in a modest retinue. Rumor had whispered of Queen Daenerys' flight eastward years ago, but her hand had remained hand to the realm's elected council, guiding reconstruction with measured words and dwarven stubbornness. He rode to Storm's End now astride a sturdy sand-colored palfrey, all wry smiles. Tyrion dismounted before the inner gates and offered Gendry a deep, yet mocking bow. "Lord Baratheon, Master of Storms, Hammer of Oaths, whatever titles you've refused, I bestow freely." "Just Gendry," he replied, clasping Tyrion's forearm. "Storm's End welcomes you. You sound more confident than the last time I saw you." Tyrion's gaze flicked to Davos. "Serenian Knight, you are ever the lighthouse." Davos chuckled. "And you the stinging sand at his feet. Come inside, my bones protest this wind." They passed beneath wet archways into the great hall, where hearths blazed and benches gleamed with polish. Gendry had refused to drape tapestries of conquest. Instead, he'd hung smith's tools and sheaves of grain, symbols of labor and sustenance. Some nobles muttered it looked like a guild hall. He welcomed the muttering. As more delegations arrived, the castle thrummed with new energy. Kitchens roasted boar rubbed in thyme, bakers kneaded honey oat bread, and down in the ward, smiths hammered iron hoops for casks of Dornish red. Children ran between noble boots, already more fleet of tongue than their parents. A dwarf joker from Gulltown performed ballads praising peace, earning coins and scowls in equal measure. Yet beneath the bustle lay tension. Old grievances curled in whispered corners. The Reach's resentment toward the Crownlands for burned fields, the Stormlanders' memory of Stannis' unforgiving reign, Dornish anger at generations of border raids. Gendry walked those corridors at night, listening, offering his broad shoulders and unpolished words. He learned that lords respected strength, small folk respected listening. To craft a dynasty of peace, he must be smith and steward both. On the eve of negotiations, a final raven arrived from the Vale. Lady Robin Arryn had declined travel due to frail health, but sent his cousin, Sir Harold Harding, bearing a chest of pale rock doves, symbol of the Vale's wish for concord. Gendry ordered the birds released at dawn so their white wings would circle Storm's End's drum tower when the first council convened. Dawn came violet and gold. The delegates gathered in the round tower chamber known as Wind's Heart, its windows stained to mimic swirling storm clouds that softened incoming light. No dais elevated any seat. The tables formed an unbroken circle of polished oak. Gendry stood only long enough to welcome them, then took a place between Lord Tyrell and Princess Arianne. There would be no single throne, no Baratheon above the rest. Equal ground breeds equal words, he hoped. The first matter, bread. Maester Lamis read reports of harvest yields, thin in the Reach after a late blight, stronger in the Riverlands, thanks to new floodgates, scarce in Dorne's Parch. The conversation might have dissolved into blame, but Gendry raised a calloused palm. Share surplus, and Storm's End will forgo tariffs on Dornish wine for 3 years. Grain for grape. Murmurs swelled. Wine merchants perked ears. Princess Arianne smiled, eyes hot copper. Lord Tyrell pinched the bridge of his nose, calculating. Tyrion sipped cider, observing. A fair start. The hand supports it. One agreement hammered out. Others followed, rotating patrols on the Rose Road under joint banners, pooled coin for rebuilding the King's Road. Intermarriage pacts not as tools of ownership, but to honor diversity. And at every turn, Gendry deferred credit, praising a clever suggestion from Lady Brienne, a practical idea from a miller's guildmaster, a soothing hymn from a septon of Mother's Mercy. The circle of oaken tables became a forge. Sparks of anger flared, quenched in compromise, heated again, until by week's end, they lifted a charter whose ink still smelled of lambswool parchment, but whose heart felt tempered. They named it the Storm Charter, for the storm that births calm. Gendry signed last, not first, and sealed it with the crowned stag, embraced by olive branch. Yet peace is more than ink. It lives in flesh. And so he rode out under the raw blue sky with a company of mixed banners to tour the marches. They inspected levees repaired jointly by Stormlanders and Dornish house carpenters, shared laughter at a harvest fair where children painted shields with lions beside wolves without fear. In a stone village near the Blackwater Rush, where walls still bore scorch marks, Gendry knelt beside an old mason. The man had lost fingers to frost during famine. Still, he chiseled new steps for the sept. Gendry took chisel and hammer, matching the mason's rhythm. Word spread as quick as hairs. The Lord of Storm's End laid stone himself, as plain as any man. Pride kindled. Peace needs symbol and story. Tales grew of Gendry, the Smith Lord who ate sailors' stew at dockside, who refused silk for his banners, so the coin could fund orphanages. Bards sang of a dynasty reborn not by sword, but hand clasp. I'm clasp. Somewhere in the melody, people forgot he was born bastard. But not all. In the chill courtyard of a minor keep, Lord Gerald Bar-Emmon, a man whose coin once financed sellswords, spoke disdain to his retainers. Bastard's blood cannot rule long. Peace weakens blades. Rumor reached Storm's End. Gendry only said, "Invite him to Storm's End. Let him see strength as kindness clad in mail." Lord Gerald arrived days later, stiff in polished steel. He expected luxury, found himself served thick barley porridge beside children of soldiers slain in the long night. He watched Gendry mend a toy wooden stag for a one-armed girl, saw Davos teaching letters to dockhands in the library Robert had never used. At dinner the bastard king, no, the Peace Lord, raised a toast to Duskendale's new market road financed by Bar-Emmon coin, credited the Lord's foresight. Courtesy disarmed suspicion better than swordplay. Lord Gerald returned home carrying a draft contract to supply lumber for Dornish shipyards. He signed. Storm's End thrummed with trade wagons. Olive oil from Dorne, barley beer from the Vale, polished granite from Casterly quarries. Craftsmen filled the courtyard with kiln-fired tiles of sea-green glaze for new roofing. The keep's silhouette softened. Less fortress, more beacon. Even Queen Sansa journeyed south to walk its halls. She arrived clothed in direwolf white, trimmed in sunset red. Her presence solemn yet warm. She and Gendry spoke long before the ocean, waves lapping at Black Rock. "You have done what many believed impossible," she said, eyes reflecting starlight. "The realm heals. A smith mends what breaks," he answered simply. "Will you claim the throne itself?" she asked. He shook his head. Power's weight crushes if held too long. Thrones birth wars. Let councils govern. No. So you would remain lord, yet king indeed. Leader in service, he corrected. If the realm thrives, titles matter little. Sansa studied him, then smiled faintly. Perhaps peace renders thrones obsolete. Her words sparked nights of thought. Could a realm once split by iron hearts accept rule by council alone? Already, the Great Council in King's Landing guided policy, and lords found advantage in consensus. Gendry imagined a monarchy fading like morning fog, replaced by rotating stewards elected by region. Radical, dangerous, and seductive. He drafted outlines, careful. Trouble brewed regardless. In the Reach, remnants of the Golden Company, leaderless after Cersei's fall, turned mercenary, plundering caravans. Gendry rode out with mixed banners, Tyrell knights, Dornish spearmen, Baratheon men-at-arms. Instead of crushing, he proposed employment. Rebuild river road bridges for fair wage, pardon for service. The sellswords balked. Swords drawn. Gendry dismounted, walked unarmed across frost-browned heather. "Choose legacy," he said, meeting each eye. "Your blades can carve graves or roads. Which tale will your children hear?" New? Silence stretched. Then a captain knelt, dropping sword. Others followed. Peace won a skirmish without spilled blood. Winter's tail lifted. Spring touched Storm's End with jasmine scent. The first Storm Congress convened, not of lords alone but guildmasters, septons, maesters, and 3 freedmen chosen by lot. Gendry opened the floor, then sat among them, forging legislation for incremental tax to fund healing houses. Voices rose, clashed, settled. They passed a bill to standardize weights and measures, and another to restrict child labor. Some scoffed. Thrice the charter nearly unraveled, yet each time Gendry hammered compromise like hot steel. Amid work, letters arrived from distant corners. From Bravos, the Sea Lord commended stable grain prices, hinting at loan forgiveness for crown debts. From the Summer Islands came cocoa and word that traders preferred Baratheon ports, for low tariffs and polite dock guards. The world noticed. He began weekly walks alone at dusk, descending cliff paths to the tide pools where barnacles clung. He listened to roar and hush, found solace in nature's ceaseless forging. Waves hammered stone but also smoothed edges. Peace might do the same to men's hearts. Yet he felt the creep of fatigue, decisions unending, expectations towering. Robert had drowned his doubts in ale and war. Gendry quenched his in honest labor, but burdens mounted. One twilight Brienne of Tarth joined him, her armor left behind for wool cloak. "You give everything," she said, footsteps crunching shells. "But even iron must rest, lest it grow brittle." "I know," he said, voice fragile. "I fear breaking." "You won't," she assured. "Not with friends to temper the heat." She placed a rough palm on his shoulder. "Let others carry flame." And so he delegated. Davos oversaw trade councils. Brienne commanded joint patrols on roads. Arianne chaired cultural exchanges, tournaments replaced by festivals where dance outshone steel. Tyrion introduced literacy programs funded by modest dragon tax on foreign imports. Slowly, power dispersed, authority shared like bread at harvest feast. Years turned. Children born after the wars grew tall enough to forget old hatreds. They played stag and wolf, dragon and rose, but in their games, alliances trumped conquest. A slender boy in Flea Bottom dreamed of forging swords only for ceremony, never war. A girl from Sunspear studied in Old Town to become Dorne's first archmaester of healing arts. Their letters reached Gendry, who read them aloud to the Congress, pride shining. Then came the Duskendale Plague. A fever swept river villages, striking young first, then old. Fear rippled faster than the fever. Some lords sealed borders, traders hoarded grain. Gendry rode at once to the stricken towns, doctors and septons in tow. He ordered quarantine lines and free grain for families trapped inside. He slept in barns beside coughing children. When asked if he feared illness, he answered, "A lord's blood is same red. My place is here." Days later the fever broke, remedies and containment working. He fell ill but recovered quick, his smith's endurance stout. Folk tales spread of the lord who dared stand with peasants in plague. Hearts welded to his cause. Upon spring's crest after the plague, the Second Storm Congress convened to ratify an unprecedented motion. Dissolution of hereditary lordship in favor of elected regional councils, each sending representatives to a great charter council. Gendry listened. Heart thundering. The debate scorched hours. Conservative lords balked. Small folk cheered. At last, vote cast. The motion passed by slender margin. Gasps filled Wind's hard hall. All eyes turned to Gendry. He rose slowly. "I was born a bastard among bastards," he began, voice steady yet soft. "Blood gave me nothing. Forging my path gave me all. If my name means anything, let it be permission. Baratheon will not vanish. It will stand among you, not above." And he set his signet ring on the oak table, antlers shining. "I will serve as elected steward until the first term ends. Then, let another hold the hammer." Tears brimmed in some eyes, disbelief in others. But thunder echoed outside, a gentle roll like approving applause from the storm god himself. The months that followed tested commitment. Some noble lines threatened secession. Trade guilds jostled for power. Yet the structure held, reinforced by trust, woven over years. Storm's End became seat of the Great Charter Council, but decisions rotated across realms. Festivals celebrated adoption of new practices rather than victories of war. Lady Talisa Manderley wrote songs of the Age of the Stag and Olive. As steward, Gendry reviewed laws, mediated disputes, and spent afternoons in the forge shaping ceremonial plowshares gifted to new farming settlements. He wore plain leather, seldom the green and gold cloak. When children pointed at him in streets, they whispered not of a warlord, but a smith who made peace. On the 10th anniversary of the Storm Charter's signing, a grand assembly filled the storm-kissed courtyard. Lanterns flickered under twilight. Music drifted on maritime breeze. Davos, gray hair turned silver, approached Gendry. "Do you marvel at what you wrought?" he asked. "No," Gendry replied, smiling at throngs of people dancing. "We wrought it, all of us." He raised a mug of honeyed mead and addressed them. "Peace belongs not to crowns or banners. It belongs to hands. Hands that build, harvest, heal. Let this dynasty stand not upon bloodlines but bonds. Let Baratheon mean brotherhood." Memem Shower. The crowd roared assent, lanterns swaying like stars come to earth. Somewhere afar, thunder rolled again, quiet and content. Gendry Baratheon, bastard-made lord, had rebuilt a dynasty, one forged on anvils of mercy, hammered under storms of doubt, quenched in waters of shared hope. And as moonlight draped storms end in silver, he knew the work was endless, like the sea's whispering tide. But he welcomed the labor, for every swing of the hammer sounded a promise. That peace, once tempered, could endure beyond any king's reign, beyond any single man's lifetime, as enduring as iron set true and tested by time. Dawn unfurled in pale ribbons across the shipbreaker horizon, the sea calm as beaten pewter, yet streaked with the bruised promise of another storm. Gendry stepped barefoot onto the parapet walk, cool stone pressing creases into the soles of his feet, while gulls rode the updrafts above. A decade of peace had left its marks on Storm's End. Terraced gardens now tumbled in fragrant tiers down the northern flank, bright with sweetroot and saffron crocus. The inner ward rang more often with the chatter of scholars than the clash of training swords. Yet every gentle dawn reminded him how easily wind and wave could change, as swift as men's hearts when fear found them wanting. He peered south, past the headland where a newly raised beacon tower glowed faint against wan sky. Its brazier had burned 3 nights running, warning of merchant ships delayed along the gullet, not by weather, but by rumors of corsairs vexing the stepstones once again. Tiny sparks of mast lanterns now pricked the distant sea. Sister ships cresting the last leagues, and relief slipped into his chest. Traders depended on those routes for grain and textiles, bound to Dornish ports. If corsairs tested the charter's patrols, the realm's fragile lattice could splinter. Brienne joined him, shrugging a cloak around her shoulders. "The convoy's late, but afloat," she observed, following his gaze. "Sir Harold's crow said they repelled 3 skirmishes, lost only a single mast." "Steel or diplomacy?" Gendry asked. "Words first?" "Steel last." They hoisted the Stag and Olive and read out the charter articles. One corsair captain yielded on the spot. She allowed herself a dry chuckle. "Turns out a charter marked with every realm's seal leaves little sport for pirates afraid of all banners at once." "But not all," he muttered. "The sea breeds bold fools." He leaned upon the weathered merlon, fingertips tracing lichen-worn grooves. "We need a standing fleet, not for conquest, but for escort. Volunteers drawn from every coast, a symbol upon the waves as strong as joint patrols on the roads." Brienne considered. "Pitch it at the Summer Congress. The lords of the Trident would pledge ships. They profit most from river timber sold for builds. And the Ironborn? They profit more from raids." She answered, grim. "But Asha Greyjoy sits at pike now. She's kept her word thus far. Might see value in a stake that positions the Isles as protectors instead of pillagers." Gendry looked west where dawn flamed brighter. "We'll invite her personally." They descended spiral stairs to the grand hall, where servants lit beeswax tapers and polished oak benches for the morning's hearing. The keep welcomed petitioners twice weekly, old practice by now, yet Gendry still felt flickers of nerves whenever the tall bronze doors groaned open and voices filled the nave. Davos, parchment in hand, awaited at table, his weathered thumb trailing across the docket. "Full roster," he greeted. "Blackwater stonemasons want subsidies for apprentices. A fisherman's wife petitions for redress after a dock accident, and citizens of Old Town send invoice seeking endorsement of their new medical academy. Storm's End will not overshadow the Citadel," Tyrion said from farther down the table, swinging diminutive legs beneath a high-backed chair. "But an academy run by former novices, free of the Archmaester's snobbery, could revolutionize care for small folk. I advise generous support, pure altruism of course, with the tiniest bit of prestige for our charter." "Then?" Gendry offered a crooked half-smile. "When your altruism shines so bright, the sun itself shields its eyes." Tyrion raised his cup in salute. "Precisely my intent." The doors opened. A hush fell. First came the fisherman's widow, trembling, cap in hand. She described a splintered plank that gashed her husband's thigh, and how dock guards turned her away when she asked for reparations. Gendry listened, jaw clenched. "Dockmaster Jostern will answer for this," he promised, scribbling a note for Brienne to deliver. "We'll see you compensated from the maritime tithe." Tears slid down the widow's cheeks. She bowed and slipped aside. Next, the stonemasons. Their spokesman unfurled blueprints of aqueduct arches proposed to channel potable water from upland springs to hamlets plagued by sickness. Apprenticeships would swell ranks, he argued, training youth across stormlands and crownlands alike. Davos stroked his beard. "How many hands?" 300 to start, my lord." The mason's fingers bore mortar scars. "And more once construction proves sound. 300 youths given craft beats 300 blades kept sheathed." Gendry replied. He approved the guild's modest loan at low interest, secured against tariffs now humming with trade. Inwardly he marveled. A realm once shattered could sponsor aqueducts like Romans of Eld. Each decision, each quill scratch, forged not only structure, but identity. After petitions, Tyrion lingered near the forge annex where Gendry often slipped away for solace. Sparks leapt from the anvil as the steward hammered a ceremonial anchorhead, gift for the coming fleet proposal. Tyrion studied the piece's elegant flukes. "You temper iron as deftly as peace," he mused. "But both may bend under strain." "You sense something?" Gendry asked without looking up. "A rumble across the narrow sea," Tyrion said. "Free cities dispute tariffs after our grain surplus undercut their markets. Braavos whispers of embargo. Pentos eyes mire for alliance. The realm's calm can be storm elsewhere." Gendry quenched the anchor in an oil bath, steam hissing. "We'll send envoys. Offer relief shipments. Invite their merchants to Congress. Prove we compete, not strangle. And now. Braavos respects coin. Mir respects steel." Tyrion's eyes held old weariness. "We must show both diversely." "I'll send 3 delegations," Gendry decided. Maester Lomes with trade proposals, Brienne with escort pledges, and Lady Maria Dondarrion. Her rhetoric wields more artistry than my hammer. Tyrion bowed slightly. "May words travel faster than storms." By summer's height, 100 sails plowed Shipbreaker Bay, warships refitted as escorts, fishing cogs repainted charter green, sleek Dornish sand skimmers with lateen rigs. The inaugural peace fleet assembled under a banner woven of sea foam and stag. On a clear morn, the council marched to Cliff Overlook for christening. Asha Greyjoy, hair whipped by gusts, planted the fleet's standard mast into rock. "Stormlord." She grinned at Gendry. "I never thought I'd see the day a Greyjoy hoisted a flag of peace. Savor the irony before it sinks." "There one." "May it stay afloat," Gendry countered, gripping her forearm in ironborn clasp. "You'll command Squadron East." "Aye." And if pirates test us, they'll learn a Greyjoy's mercy equals her mettle. The fleet launched amid horns and shouts, hulls slicing blue-green water. Gendry watched until tiny sails blurred against horizon. Pride warmed him, but a smith's caution cooled it. Weapons of defense might easily become arms of dominion should some future steward covet power. He drafted strict articles. Fleets answer only to Congress majority. Any offensive maneuver requires unanimous vote, and captains rotate among realms annually. Tyrion scoffed at the bureaucracy, yet agreed safeguards were wise. That same week, ravens beat frantic wings from the Vale. Bandits, veterans of forgotten skirmishes, had seized canyon passes near the Erie, ransoming caravans. Lord Robert Arryn, grown to mild maturity yet still frail, begged assistance. Brienne mustered a composite host, Baratheon light cavalry, Vale longbowmen, even a knot of free folk archers, pledged since the Great Council opened northern borders. Gendry insisted on meeting bandit leaders first to offer amnesty and labor contracts, repairing mountain roads. Tyrion shook his head. "You tempt an arrow through the eye. An arrow of fear is sharpest," Gendry said. "If I meet them as a king of old, I prove their tale that royals never change. If I meet them as a man with open hands, perhaps they lower bows long enough to listen." Now, Brienne accompanied him into the bitter valley. Snow still clung to ledges. Bandits lined outcroppings, crossbows leveled. Gendry strode ahead alone, helm off, cloak left behind. "I was a bastard smith with nothing," he called, voice echoing. "War took kin from you, as it did from me. But war is ended by those who refuse new battles. Join us. Forge a road. Earn coin. Drink with pride, not guilt." Silence answered. Then a clatter as one crossbow clanked to stone. Slowly, others followed. When the bandit captain climbed down, eyes wary, he extended calloused hands matching Gendry's. The contract was signed on a boulder smoothed by snow melt. The Vale roads reopened. Apple carts rolled unmolested, and a song sprouted among caravan fiddlers. The Bastard Hand, a tale of a smith lord who halted arrows with words. It traveled faster than ravens, lodging in tavern rafters from salt pans to sunspear. With each retelling exaggeration bloomed. Arrows turned to spears, bandit host to 10,000, but the seed remained, peace born of courage, not cowardice. Years folded like parchment. Congress erected libraries in every regional hub, free to all. The first generation educated under the charter reached adulthood, their perspectives unbound by ancestral feuds. Yet as new shoots grew, older trees sometimes withered. Lord Tito's, Blackwood, stalwart ally, succumbed to winter fever. His heir Benjicot harbored bitterness for lands lost in ancient pacts. In small sessions he challenged tariffs, spurned alliances with former rivals. Gendry met him beneath Storm's End's smithy, sparks dancing overhead. "You sharpen discontent," Gendry said while chiseling a decorative shield boss. "What stirs it?" Benjicot's narrow shoulders stiffened. "My hall roof leaks while Lannisters pave markets in marble. Peace treats us unequal." "Then propose remedy," Gendry urged. "Charter coins remain for public works. Draft a plan for Blackwood. We'll weigh it fair." Pride wrestled with reason in the young lord's eyes. Eventually he exhaled. "Maps and costs by fortnight. But mark me, if council stalls, Blackwood will act. Act within charter, and you'll find allies," Gendry promised, handing him the newly forged boss, a raven soaring across oak leaves. "Let this remind you, strength with beauty is richest." Benjicot accepted the piece as though its warmth seeped into his veins. At the next Congress, he unveiled an ambitious woodland reservoir project, funded half by Riverland's tolls, half by Crownland loans, repaid via timber shares. The proposal passed near unanimous. Blackwood Hall's roof would glint copper before next frost, and a seed of cooperation sank deeper. Still, not all seeds thrive. In the free cities, Mirenlease erupted into trade war. Their corsairs ignored the peace flag, burning a chartered grain bark bound for Tyrosh. The fleet's Stag Squadron intercepted survivors clinging to wreckage. Asha's captains clamored for counterattack. Congress convened an emergency session, candles guttering as debate flared. Some lords thirsted for punitive raids, others feared escalation. Gendry stood at last, voice low, yet taut. Our realm was rebuilt on the notion that strength is proved through restraint, he argued. Let us dispatch envoys under truce and demand reparations within moon's turn. Should they refuse, only then consider sanction. Not war. Sanction. Embargo of ironwood, blockade handshake with bravos to seize corsair vessels. The sea can be policed through law as well as blade. Now, weeks ticked by, tension coiled. Myrish officials scoffed at reparations, emboldened by Lysine allies. But when Bravo sided with the Charter, its Iron Bank keen to protect investment, the Myrlees coalition buckled. They paid double damages, ceded 2 galleys as goodwill. No blood spilled. Tyrion toasted with arbor gold until he sang bawdy reels. Yet domestic storms brewed of subtler hue. A faction of old guard Stormlander knights whispered that continued dissolution of noble privilege diluted identity. They rallied around Sir Martin Bellwether, scion of minor house, but veteran of Blackwater. Bellwether's speeches painted peace as a velvet shroud smothering warrior spirit. He championed a revival of tourneys with jousts to first blood. Youth flocked, craving spectacle. Congress relucted, tourneys risked inflaming rivalry. But popular agitation mounted. One autumn dusk, Bellwether challenged Gendry to honorable joust, no lethal stakes, winner to claim symbolic copper crown. The courtyard buzzed. Tyrion advised decline. You lend credence to backlash if you step into tilt. Brienne suggested acceptance. Meet them and show respect for tradition, but temper danger. Gendry weighed both. At dawn he buckled armor, took up lance forged in his smithy, unadorned ash shaft capped by steel shaped like olive leaf. The lists thrummed. Bellwether's charger stamped, plume streaming crimson to Adi. Trumpets blared. They thundered forth. First pass. Their lances glanced, splinters flying. Second pass. Bellwethers shattered near Gendry's pauldron, bruising muscle. Third pass. Gendry leaned into rhythm, striking just so. Bellwether toppled, armor clanging dust. The crowd gasped, then roared when Gendry dismounted, offered arm, and raised Bellwether to feet. He spoke to gathered throngs. Valor finds purpose beyond war. Let contests celebrate skill yet honor peace. Henceforth annual tourneys shall award not gold, but commissions. Winners may direct crown funds to public works of their choosing. Tilt for the chance to build, not destroy. The compromise dazzled. Tourney fever remained, but each victor returned home to construct river mills, foundling houses, or orchard terraces bearing the carved crest of Charter Stag. The peace forged deeper roots. Midwinter's bite returned, ushering thick kelp storms and rime along parapets. Gendry's black hair now silvered at the temples, though his shoulders retained smithy breadth. He knelt in the solar before a long cedar chest, prying lid with calloused fingers. Inside lay Robert's warhammer, its iron head etched with nicks. Beside it, a slender rod of greenheart wood. He lifted the old hammer first. Weighty, brutal. Memories flashed. A sellsword camp outside King's Landing where he'd once swung at anvils, unaware of true fatherhood. Then he set it gently back and raised the rod. Unassuming, tapered at ends. A baton of stewardship carved after the Charter's birth, engraved with every realm's sigil. Lighter to hold, heavier to justify. Voices drifted from corridor. Children of Congress delegates touring the keep. He strode out, rod in hand. They stared wide-eyed. Is that a king's scepter? One asked. No, Gendry answered. It's everyone's. One day perhaps one of you will carry it. And now all. A red-haired girl frowned. Why not keep it? Because power is strongest when shared, not gripped, he said. A small boy touched the rod's olive motif. My mother says peace is fragile. It is, Gendry said softly. Like glass. But glass can be shaped into windows that show us wonders. He knelt, meeting their gaze. "Promise me you'll protect it." They nodded solemnly. He smiled, heart buoyed. That evening he met Davos by Roaring Hearth. "I feel seasons shifting," Gendry admitted. "Another generation rises. Congress may ask me to remain steward, but perhaps new voice is needed." "Now," Davos' eyes shone. "You forged the mold. Let them pour new iron. Yet you must guide the cooling." "Then I'll stand aside after next term," Gendry resolved, "but accept role as keeper of the charter. Advisor only. No vote, merely counsel." Tyrion later quipped, "Beware. The realm may collapse without your stubbornness." But his smile held respect. The transition plan circulated. Murmurs were cautious yet not fearful. Over 2 decades, Gendry's reputation had become the charter's spine. If he trusted succession, many would follow. The Congress gathered on vernal equinox to elect a new steward. Candidates presented platforms. Lady Arabella Tyrell championed agricultural innovation. Maester Samwell Tarly, now Archmaester of Civic Histories, offered scholarly governance. And Princess Diana Martell pressed for expansion of free ports. Debate spanned dawn to starlight. In the end, on 9th ballot, the Circle chose Brienne of Tarth, her impartial honor seen as bridge for all. She accepted, voice trembling though gaze steady. "I was a knight sworn to defend a king. Now, I defend a realm without one. Let every sword remain sheathed, unless to guard the helpless." Gendry watched with pride beyond measure. He passed the stewardship rod to her, then stepped back, hands empty yet spirit full. Ceremony ended. Brienne approached. "You look lost without hammer or rod." "I have a forge," he said, grin broad. "Plans for aqueduct spigots shaped as stags. Peace needs ornament." Wind swept the parapets. Bells rang over harbor where fleets exchanged salutes. The realm breathed as one bellows. Steel tempered anew. Years trickled on. Gendry traveled incognito, sometimes as roving smith, sometimes as mediator. In River Run he quelled feud over fishing rights by demonstrating iron net weights doubling catch. In Sunspear, he minted olive branch coinage to ease barter along sand routes. In Old Town he lectured apprentices on metallurgy, teaching that alloys of copper and compassion yield rarest strength. One crisp night on the Roserad, he paused at hearth of a modest inn. A traveling bard strummed lute, singing verse of the peace lord who forged a dynasty without crown. She'd never seen him yet sang his deeds with awe. Gendry reclined near fire, hood low, listening. When applause swelled, he approached, paying her with a small ingot of tin. "You honor me, good smith," she said. "And you honor the realm," he replied. "But remember, stories grow. When you tell it next, add others. Brienne the just, Davos the steady, Tyrion the wise. No one builds peace alone." The bard nodded, eyes alight. "So I shall." As he retired that evening, he pondered the reach of tales, how myth could outlast marble. Perhaps one day, centuries ahead, folk would recite a story of a humble hammer that rang a realm into harmony. Whether his name endured mattered less than the lesson. Back at Storm's End, aged yet unbowed, he resumed forging. Plowshares for distant colonies, hinges for doors of new libraries, miniature anvils for orphan students. Children visited, wide-eyed, to watch sparks dance. He taught them safety, measure, patience. Strike true, strike fair. Heed in tone, rhythm guiding hearts as much as hands. Storm's End itself had metamorphosed. Glass skylights channeled morning sun into communal atriums. Windmills crowned the drum tower, grinding grain for communal ovens. No battlements bristled with siege engines, only planters drooping with vine tomatoes. On a late summer afternoon, Brienne sought him at the forge. Her hair now silver blonde, face etched with righteous years. Cobblers in King's Landing petition craft apprenticeships. They ask if the peace lord might donate leather tools fashioned from his hand. She arched brow. He laughed. "My hand? I'll craft tools, not carve myself. Tell them to send design sketches. Her smile softened. Congress also voted to commission a chronicle of the Charter's founding. They'd like your first-hand account. Ben Swan. He quenched a horseshoe, steam curling. I can barely write legibly. Samuel will transcribe. He wiped brow. Very well. But I'll speak plainly. That's all they ask. When Samuel arrived with parchment rolls, Gendry recounted, hammer strokes of memory, not gilded but raw. The fear of First Congress, the ache of decisions that cost him sleep, the sweat on brows of masons who built aqueducts. Samuel's quill scratched tirelessly. A testament to humility, he remarked. Just tell it true, Gendry insisted. The chronicle published in libraries across realm. Readers marveled at small details of hope blossoming from ruins. In Pike, young shipwrights quoted passages. In Winterfell, students debated methods of inclusive governance. The Peace Lord's candor became study of statecraft. Winter's herald returned with frosted breath on window panes. Gendry's joints ached, but he worked still, shaping a gift. A gilded olive branch for Brienne's 25th anniversary as steward. One dawn he carried it toward the council hall, when pain lanced his chest. He paused, leaning against corridor pillar. Footsteps quickened. Davos, older and stooped yet sharp-eyed, caught his arm. Sit, lad, the Onion Knight murmured, though Gendry now surpassed 50 springs. He guided him to bench. Maester Lommies arrived, pressed ear to chest. Fatigue, he declared. Forge less. Sleep more. Gendry waved away fuss. Help me deliver this, he said, holding branch. Together they presented it. Brienne's eyes glistened. You gift me symbol of peace, yet you are the symbol, she whispered. No, he corrected, voice raw. We are. That evening, hearth crackling, he rested beside window where moonlight glimmered on bay. Waves lapped constant. A lullaby of forging peace, with tides as hammers and shore as anvil. He closed eyes, breath deep, listening. Somewhere down in Ward, children practiced flute, notes wavering yet earnest. He drifted to dream of iron shaped into wings, lifting across sky, scattering seeds of harmony upon lands far beyond Westeros. And in dream he heard Robert's voice, booming laughter softened to pride, saw Ned Stark nodding approval, felt dear faces lost to war smile at last. At sunrise he did not wake. Maester Lommies found him seated, features serene, hands folded like a smith at rest between heats. Word spread on wings swifter than ravens. Gendry Baratheon, Forge Master of Peace, Keeper of the Storm Charter, had laid down his final hammer. But the hammer echoed. Bells tolled not in mourning alone, but celebration of a life poured into realm's veins. Congress decreed no statue, at his own recorded request. Instead they commissioned forges in every province, open hearths where anyone might learn craft, symbol of equality. Journeyman smiths taught peasants, lords, and freedmen side by side. Sparks rose like stars reclaimed from earth. Brienne carried his baton in processional down Storm's End's garden terraces. Children lined path, each bearing a simple iron nail they had forged. At cliff's edge, they cast nails into sea, iron returning to waves it once conquered, salt to remind memory of hardships overcome. Years ahead, travelers would still pause at roadside hospice. Sip free barley ale brewed by Guild of Peace Lords Foundry. And hear story of Dynasty rebuilt through calm. Scholars would debate how one bastard's refusal to seize crown shifted axis of power. But for most, the tale became comfort that ordinary hands could steer history. And long after storms lost their fury against black ramparts, after glass skylights dulled beneath lichen, after flags frayed to threads, still, inside workshops lit by coal glow, apprentices would lift hammers, recall an adage etched above every lintel: strike true, strike fair. For peace, once forged, is the noblest steel. Night fell over Shipbreaker Bay in a hush so deep the sea itself seemed to pause in reverence. its swell turned glass smooth beneath an ivory moon. From the windowed galleries of Storm's End the waters reflected as a broad silver road, and on that road a single lantern bobbed. First light of a fishing dhow returning under the charter fleet's escort. Brienne watched from the keep's highest loggia, fingers wrapped about the baton of stewardship. Gendry's absence lay across her shoulders heavier than any cloak. She had buried brothers in arms, owed life to oaths broken and renewed. But grief for the Smith Lord's passing felt stranger. A quiet ache like half-forged steel that might never cool. Footsteps approached, a measured, familiar rhythm. Davos Seaworth, leaning now upon a cane of polished driftwood, joined her at the balustrade. His eyes lingered on the silvery tide. He would have liked that, Brienne said, nodding to the lantern's soft glow. "Aye," Davos murmured. "Proof a small flame guides many home." Silence stretched. Out on the waves, escort galleys formed a chevron, their signal horns distant and mournful. When the first hull kissed the harbor pier, cheer drifted faintly through the night, dockhands hailing safe return, children calling for distant fathers. Peace in motion, one lantern at a time. But in the council hall below, parchment maps lay splayed under guttering tapers. Storm patterns creeping from the summer sea, trade graphs dipped by free cities' strife, rumor scrolls of a deviant faith sprouting in the mountains of the moon. The realm's heartbeat had not slowed with Gendry's last. Rather it quickened, demanding new caretakers ready to mend. Dawn spilled soft rose across corridors, still heavy with candle smoke. Brienne convened an early assembly, only core advisors. Davos, Tyrion, Princess Arianne Martell, Maester Samwell Tarly, and young Robin Arryn's envoy, Lady Maralise Corbray. They encircled the oaken council table. Gendry had once sanded smooth with his own hands. Brienne began without flourish. Corsair raids near the stepstones have slackened, but storms approach. Grain convoys to Old Town may founder if we keep current routes. Oh. Arianne leaned forward, dark hair slithering over ochre velvet. Dornish pilots know leeward passes south of the arbor. Let us guide convoys. Split risk. Samwell scratched notes. But shifting entire fleets south will leave Stormlands thin on winter stores. Tyrion swirled a goblet of mint water. Ale lost appeal to him years ago. Then hedge with charter warrants. Peg grain prices to Braavosi iron notes. If market sees, the Iron Bank swallows first shock. Davos frowned. You put faith in Braavos again. A lender lends only for profit. True, Tyrion replied. But profit binds them to our stability. They will fight collapse tooth and nail. Debate spiraled. Brienne listened, weighing counsel against instinct. Gendry had taught her that governance was forge work. Apply heat. Watch alloy flow. Strike just before brittleness. She hammered. Princess Arianne will command southern escort, she decreed. But half our larders will ride in sturdy coast hoppers hugging Cape Wrath, escorted by Stag Squadron. Tyrion, negotiate iron note hedges, but cap interest at 5 claws per annum. Davos, sail tomorrow to Driftmark. Borrow Valyrian stormcutters for rapid dispatch should weather sour. Heads nodded. The plan took shape, composite, resilient. Yet Samwell's brow pinched. One more matter, he ventured. Letters from Northgrove speak of wool tithes withheld. The shepherd communes blame levy scribes for miscounts. Send auditors, Brienne decided. If error holds, reimburse twice the amount. Faith is worth its weight in fleece. Tyrion smirked. Generous pockets for one who never fancied coin. Gendry left coffers stout. She said, voice steel. Spend them to sustain his purpose. That purpose soon faced sharper testing. A fortnight later, a Taroshi bark named Golden Vale limped into Blackwater Bay, hull scored and rudder splintered. Crew told of a new confederation among free cities' mercantile princes, calling themselves the Sapphire League. Against charter tariffs, they threatened blockade of Westerosi vessels east of the Stepstones. Their emblem, cut sapphire upon sea-green silk, already daubed charred planks floating in the narrow sea. Storm's End hummed with urgent missives. Tyrion cursed the predictability of greed. Davos sharpened quills. Arianne petitioned Sunspear for extra dramans. But Brienne refused hasty clash. Instead, she summoned Oliver Noy, master of Gendry's great forges, and one of few artisans who'd conversed as equal with Braavosi sealards. Olivar entered smelling of soot and salt. "Steel solves many problems," he said when briefed, "yet steel that never unsheathes is finest of all. Offer them a better edge." "How?" Brienne asked. He spread a new design across the table. Schematics of slim-keeled courier ships with reinforced ribs of stag-shaped iron lattice, draft shallow enough to ride shoals where heavier galleys foundered. "We gift prototypes to the League. Show them joint venture profits dwarf tariffs lost. Provide wedge of partnership and watch their blockade crumble under coin truer than any threat." Tyrion clapped once, delighted. A peaceful Trojan horse. Mythical, profitable, irresistible. But Davos' caution surfaced. "Gifting weapons, even light couriers, arms them against us." Brienne studied the blueprint. "We share build schematics with Braavos first. If League repurposes vessels for piracy, Iron Bank loses investment. The bank will leash its clients." Boats tallied tight but passed. Within 3 moons, Oliver's storm dart hulls raced to Tyrosh under charter escort. In hold, weighted contracts, guaranteeing the League 10% stake in every cargo carried. The lure took. Sapphire Princes lifted blockade in exchange for exclusive courier rights, and the first joint fleet sailed west, hull sides stamped with entwined stag and sapphire. Grain flowed unimpeded. War spared. Yet not everyone celebrated. In the mountains of the moon, whispers of the Azure faith, an ascetic sect preaching that peace was theft of righteous struggle, grew into small militias. Their blue cloth banners flickered on ridgelines, sermons condemning smith-lords who softened the realm's edge. Reports reached council. Brienne dispatched envoys bearing food and medical kits, hoping succor would dissolve zeal. But the Azure faith refused, tainted charity, abducting envoys for a ransom of printed grievances, return of ancestral warrior codes, abolition of charter taxes, reinstatement of dueling right to settle disputes. Samwell grimaced reading demands. They twist ancient Andal lore into creed of blood. "Then untwist it," Brienne said. "You study chronicles, journey there, teach truths." Samwell paled but agreed, requesting guarded escort. Davos volunteered veterans of the Brotherhood without banners, men once outlaws, now roving justiciars under the charter. They rode for the Vale midwinter. Deep snows slowed travel. Avalanches sheared passes, yet they reached Azure's primary enclave, a half-ruined beacon tower where bonfires painted night sky. Samwell requested parley. A lean preacher emerged, face gaunt, eyes blazing like coals. He named himself Brother Storm, claiming visions of the warrior weeping chains forged by Baratheon peace. Samwell answered with calm scholarship, citing ballads of knightly oaths sworn to protect lowborn, not exploit them. Brother Storm scoffed. Negotiations teetered until Samwell produced a battered journal, writings of Sir Barristan Selmy describing horrors of the sack of King's Landing, regrets of a life spent in service to violent kings. He read passages aloud beneath flicker of bonfire. Some militants shifted uneasily. Truth cut sharper than sword. Brother Storm's fury erupted. He proclaimed Samwell heretic, ordered archers to notch. But one archer, a freckled youth from Gulltown, lowered bow, mind struck by Selmy's words. Others followed. Confusion fractured command. Davos justiciars stepped between, blades sheathed, offering truce. By dawn, dozens of militants accepted safe conduct to Winterfell's new theology college, a gift of Queen Sansa, where debate replaced dogma. Brother Storm vanished into crags, cause broken but seed of resentment lingering under snow. As spring thaw seeped south, Storm's End prepared the 10th Festival of Hammers, games founded to honor Gendry's craft. Contestants now vied in feats beyond martial skill. Bridge design contests, Water wheel efficiency trials, choral compositions celebrating unity. Winners gained charter funds for communal projects. This year, a shoemaker's apprentice from White Harbor unveiled boot soles of treated sharkskin lasting thrice tannery leather. His prize financed flood levees near Moat Cailin, long battered by Blackwater runoff. During closing night's revel, Brienne wandered marketplace stalls bright with floating lanterns. She paused at a booth where a dark-eyed girl hammered tiny copper olive leaves onto hair combs. The girl bowed. "I forge souvenirs, so no traveler forgets pieces blossom." Brienne purchased a comb, slipping it into braid. Around her, laughter spangled air. Yet she sensed approaching tension. Lightning felt rather than seen. In crowd edges, she spied stern faces of knights nostalgic for old tourneys. Merchants muttering of rising courier fees. Free folk traders discouraged by border permits. Peace covered wide ground. Cracks formed where its mortar thinned. Council's next session sprawled 3 days. Lord Benjicott Blackwood, now seasoned and broad-shouldered, pressed for exemptions on timber export quotas, claiming riverlands bore disproportional conservation burdens. Across Circle, Lady Arabella Tyrell countered that Reach Vineyards suffered similar restrictions. Fairness demanded parity. Voices rose. Brienne rapped gavel on oak, echo rippling. "Remind yourselves," she stated, "quotas protect forests and fields for future children. If burdens rest uneven, adjust measure, not purpose." They adjourned to drafting committees. Overnight, Samwell devised weighted quotas tied to soil replenishment metrics. Tyrion structured compensatory tax credits. Benjicott begrudgingly conceded. When resolution passed, applause rippled. Tensions easing. Proof cracks could be patched when resolved with craft. Evening of vote, Brienne stood before Gendry's old anvil in the castle forge. No iron waited upon it, only the olive branch baton. She lifted baton, remembered his words, "Strength with beauty, richest." Her reflection glimmered on metal. Responsibility etched her lines deeper, but resolve glowed bright. Footfalls soft approached. Princess Arianne bowed. Storm reports calmed, convoys safe. Yet I read tired worry in your eyes. Brienne exhaled. "I wonder how long before new storms gather." Arianne touched the baton. "Peace, like desert bloom, survives drought by rooting deep. You nurture roots, storms feed them eventually." Brienne smiled despite weight. "Then we continue." Years coalesced into decades. Children born since charter now led guilds, commanded fleets, taught at universities sprung from Samwell's lectures. Architecture shifted. Houses built of glazed brick lattices resembling stag antlers. Communal courtyards ringed by olive trees grafted from Gendry's original garden. In King's Landing, the Red Keep's once bloody throne room transformed into Charter Hall, its floor mosaiced with multicolored houses interlocking like gears. The Iron Throne melted long ago in secret furnace, recast into plowshares adorning entryway. Silent testament. But new threats bloomed beyond seas. In distant Yeti, expansionist warlords coveting spice routes commissioned floating fortresses, rumored to carry dragonbone ballistae. Bravosi whispers reached Storm's End. Yeti envoy negotiating passage through disputed jade gates that could pinch trade east of Korth. Congress convened extraordinary summit. Options ranged from naval expedition to distant diplomacy. Young steward Marilise Corbray, elected after Brienne stepped aside, implored council to respect precedent. Talk first, fight never if possible. She dispatched polyglot diplomats. Scholars of Yiddish culture, and as goodwill cargo, storm dart prototypes adapted for monsoon seas. Months passed. Messages returned. Yeti agreed to exclude charter routes from expansion zone in exchange for medical technologies developed at Old Town's Academy. Crisis diffused, yet council gleaned lesson. Westeros must look outward, not inward, to safeguard peace's horizon. Marilise proposed an international forum at Cuahor, where charter delegates and free cities envoys would meet thrice yearly. Tyrion, hair white yet wit silver, applauded. Extend the forge's radius, and sparks scatter. but kindle rather than burn. Toward twilight of her life, Brienne traveled north by wheelhouse, longing to witness snows of Winterfell one last time. The castle had grown into beacon of culture and craft. Its granite walls now ringed a winter garden warmed by steam pipes invented by northern tinkerers. Queen Sansa, hair shot with frost, welcomed Brienne with tearful laughter. They walked Godswood, where heart tree bled crimson leaves on pristine drift. I feared Gendry's dream too fragile, Sansa confessed, fingers tracing bark. Yet here we stand, decades on, and war a memory dimmer each year. Brienne gazed at children skating upon mirror-smooth pond, their scarves interwoven colors of every realm. May they never learn the weight of mail. Sansa's eyes, cool as dawn, warmed. Stories ensure they know cost without payment in blood. Samwell's chronicles teach better than swords ever could. As snowflakes spiraled, Brienne sensed quietly that legacy surpassed any single soul. Peace lived in how children laughed without flinching, how lords debated without drawing steel, how olive trees rooted where battlements once loomed. She pressed Gendry's copper comb into Sansa's hand. Pass it forward. Let future braids remember him. Winter Queen closed fingers around trinket. And remember you, Lady Steward. Shield of the Charter. They embraced beneath ancient boughs. When Brienne's time came, she lay in Storm's End solar under a quilt embroidered with stags and roses, wolves and krakens, lions and sun spears. Congress session recessed early. Delegates filed through to pay respects. Iron-born captains whose grandsires raided coastlines, Riverlands millers whose floodgates she'd funded, Dornish midwives trained in free clinics. She greeted each by name, till voice waned. On her final evening, thunder rumbled far offshore, soft as a drum roll. She whispered a last wish to Davos' great-granddaughter, now captain of the flagship Peacebringer. Keep sail true, keep forge hot. Then exhaled a breath carrying scent of forge smoke and salt. As bells tolled, council decreed a dawn vigil at every hearth in realm. Though no statues were cast, blacksmiths of each province heated forges, striking once at sunrise in unison. Iron against iron, a ripple of resonant chimes crossing mountains, woods, deserts, shore. Sparks flew skyward like fireflies. Children counted strokes. One for Gendry, second for Brienne, the founders. Some murmured that when final spark faded, they heard wind carry echo of hammers still. Succession proceeded smoothly. Maralize remained steward. New advisors rose from schools Gendry funded, scholars of navigation, botany, jurisprudence. Among them, a quiet lad named Willem Waters, an orphan who learned metallurgy in the Peace Foundry of Maidenpool, delivered a paper to Congress proposing sky-powered wind carriages, traversing ridges too steep for wagons. His concept won Festival of Hammers grant. Within 10 years, airy funiculars stitched Vale to Riverlands, hoisting barley and letters alike. Each carriage bore plaque reading, "Strike true, strike fair." Beyond seas, the charter inspired emulation. The Isle of Endiath, freed from slaver fleets by the charter's fleet decades earlier, convened its own cross-tribe council. Qarth merchants adopted apprentice festivals awarding community projects. Even in sullen lies, street urchins formed olive guilds, teaching each other craft skills. Peace rippled outward, unstoppable now, because it resided not in treaty, but example. Perhaps stories gild some edges. Bards sing of the bastard hammer whose single blow shattered the Iron Throne, of a maid knight who governed with unbent honor, of councils where the lowborn's voice equaled lords. Yet beneath embroidery lies iron truth, compromise hammered, empathy tempered, vigilance quenched in law. And like any blade, peace required honing, endless strokes on whetstone of time. Centuries on, when archivists catalogued dust-fragile records, they debated which date marked dawn of the Olive Age. Some chose the day Storm Charter signed, others Gendry's death. Still others, Brienne's hammer-chime vigil. In truth, dawn never settles on one horizon. It moves with people who chase new light. And so dawn moves still across Shipbreaker Bay, where wave crests burn gold and children tug nets from water glittering with schooling mackerel. Above them towers Storm's End, no longer grim keep but living workshop of ideas. From its tallest gallery hangs a single lantern, kept alight each night since the Peace Lord's passing, its beam sweeping dark to guide wanderers. Some swear when wind tilts flame just so, it flickers like smithy spark, and if you listen under hush of surf, you'll hear faint rhythm of hammer on anvil, forging future stroke by steady stroke, endless as the tide. Mist rolled in waves along the Stormland's coast, pearl-gray sheets drawn inland by a humming westerly that carried the tang of salt and the promise of overdue rain. It was midsummer in the 73rd year of the Charter reckoning, and most of Westeros lay under a warm, steady sun. But here, upon the bluffs above Shipbreaker Bay, clouds gathered low enough to scrape the watchtower roofs, and every timber groaned at their touch. The gulls that once screamed across dawn horizons now wheeled in uneasy silence, folding their wings flat as the wind stiffened. Deep in the old forge yard, the same square where Gendry Baratheon had once taught squires to draw steel for nails instead of spearheads, a half-circle of apprentices huddled beneath a hastily rigged awning of sailcloth. They were boys and girls of 12 or 13, bare-armed and soot-smeared, holding tongs and hammers whose grips were too large for their palms. At the center knelt Master Jean Farrow, third-generation forged mistress of Storm's End, chipping away a clay mold to reveal a bronze plaque. When the final shard cracked free, she lifted the piece for all to see. Twin ships lean and swift, their prows carved as stags, their sails a blossom of olive leaves. "Storm darts," she declared, voice clear above the rumble of thunder. "Remember the curves here. The thin ridge along the keel. Those who rebuilt the Peace Fleet used ribs so light they flexed with the sea instead of breaking it." She tapped the relief. "It is not enough to shape metal strong, you must shape it wise." A rangy boy with a shock of white blonde hair eyed the plaque. "Master, why carve ships when air gondolas cross the Vale now? My cousin rode one last month." Jane shrugged. "Because seas still feed us, and storms still snap masts. When your cousin's windropes freeze mid-blizzard, he will beg a sailor's courage." She set the plaque on a trestle, motioning them closer. "But let us speak of storms, for the sky means to lecture us soon." Lightning forked seaward. The apprentices flinched. Rain spit hard enough to drum upon their awning. Jane dismissed them with a laugh and a promise of hot mulled cider by nightfall. They scattered, iron clanging as tongs were dropped and caught again. In the sudden hush that followed, footsteps crept over damp flagstone, deliberate, unhurried. Willem Waters, steward of the realm these last 11 years, stepped under the awning's dripping lip. Once a slight lad who dared to dream of sky roads, he had broadened into lean solidity, long-limbed, weather-creased at the corners of dark eyes, hair tied back in a plain leather thong. His cloak was half-soaked, though he seemed not to mind. "Master Farrow," he greeted. "The melody of hammers carries clear even in a gale." "You taught half those children to read casting diagrams, my lord," Jane replied, wiping bronze flecks from her sleeves. "Their rhythm honors you as much as me. But what wind drives the steward into the forge yard?" Willem unslung a satchel, drawing forth a scroll, sealed in green wax. "A wind from the east, and rather colder than this." He broke the seal, unfurled a map inked in red and black. "Yesterday's Raven out of Evenfall reports a flotilla here, near Tarth's Heels. 25 ships thought to hail from the Sapphire League. Only 5 under proper banner. The rest," he tapped smudged crimson marks, "free captains, unlicensed. Pirates? Perhaps, or opportunists who smell change." He folded the map. "There have been fires along the disputed coast. League princes war among themselves. The dragons of old Yeti now squabble over cinnamon and jade. Trade currents lurch like a wounded eel. When channels shift, predators nose upriver." Jane chewed her lip. "Storm's End has withstood gales fiercer than rogue corsairs." Yes, but the charter doesn't rest on stone and mortar. It rests on faith. Faith that banners mean safety and tablets mean law. If raiders break that faith, we may patch walls yet lose hearts. Bay. A heavier peal of thunder rolled, but another sound threaded with it. Hooves on stone, quick and urgent. A messenger galloped into the yard, mud spattered, cloak plastered to her back. She dismounted and knelt. Lord Steward, Master Pharaoh, the beacons are lit along the Wendwater. Coastal villages send word. Strangers have landed. Willem's brows knitted. How many? A handful at first. Scouts? They flew no flag, wore sea-drenched mail. One carried a banner of pale azure. Slit clear through, as if by blade. Damn? Jane exchanged a glance with Willem. Brother Storm's disciples. Or those who murdered him, Willem muttered. Either way, Tarth's garrison will ride, but we must not answer axes with axes. He turned to the messenger. Send ravens to Driftmark. Call the storm cutters back from grain escort. Get me the captain of Peacebringer. The rider saluted and bolted. Jane watched shadows flick across Willem's face beneath the awning's flap. You will parley. He nodded. If they come with quarrels, we offer compromise. If they seek plunder, we offer purpose. Dentro. And if they spit on purpose, his jaw set. Then we defend. But the first hammer stroke should ring of peace. The tide was turning when Peacebringer slid from Storm's End harbor, her hull sheeting rainwater in curtains of silver. She carried no trebuchets, no scorpions, only swivel casts that launched hammers wrapped in soft silk. Projectiles meant to stun, not maim. Her decks bore barrels of dried cod and barley, casks of olive oil, and bolts of undyed wool, all gifts for any who would talk before drawing steel. Willem stood at the prow, cloak snapping, gazing across water rubbed slate black by the storm. Master Pharaoh accompanied him as envoy. Beside her, a slim Vale archer named Joran, there to guard with arrows that hummed but never cut flesh. By dusk they sighted the unknown sails, dark silhouettes clustered between two sea stacks like gulls upon carcass. A quick glass showed what the rider's words had not. These hulls were no lean corsair galleys. Their sides rose high, plated in overlapping iron scales of strange design, and their masts flew single pennons of bleached hide daubed with slanting blue slashes, storm runes from beyond 1,000 isles, if the old maps could be believed. As the distance shrank, a chill rippled down Willem's spine. These were not League stragglers. Peacebringer signaled thrice. White lantern for peaceful approach, blue for council, green for charter escort. The stranger flagship answered with a single orange flare that fumed sparks and died, leaving no message recognized by Westerosi code. Still, Willem ordered sails trimmed, course unaltered. Bridging distance to a bowshot, Peacebringer hove to. Willem raised speaking trumpet. I am Willem Waters, steward of the Charter of Olive and Stag. We approach in peace. State your purpose, and we shall parley. A long pause. Then a figure climbed the enemy vessel's rail, a woman tall as daybreak, wearing lamellar plates of shimmering indigo. Her head was shaved, except a central ridge of braids, tipped with jade beads. She cupped her palms, shouted across wind in thickly accented Valyrian. Peace must be earned, not declared. Willem switched tongues, replying in the high speech. Name your grievance. We will hear. Our grievance is silence. The seas choke on treaties penned in libraries far from storm or serpent. We come to remind you that peace without challenge rots the marrow. Jane muttered. They sound like azure zealots reforged. Willem called back. You speak of challenge. Bring it to Congress at Storm's End. Raise your voice among many. Let law weigh your claims. Damn. Siwan. Laughter crackled across the gap, half mocking, half admiring. Words in circles forge only chains. We forge in flame. On that cue, rows of arbalists rose behind her crew. Willem felt the deck tense beneath his feet. He raised a palm to his own archers. Hold. Voice steady, he said. Flame blackens iron, but tempered iron shapes worlds. Lay down quarrels. Take up counsel. The Indigo captain turned, barked an order. A single bolt fired, whistling overhead to slam into Peacebringer's main mast. There it quivered, a message more than wound. She pointed at the bolt, then at Willem. First test. Next strikes hull. Jane's hand slipped to a hammer pendant at her throat. Steward, if we retreat, they'll chase blood. Decide. Willem inhaled, salt-laden with tension. Every lesson of Gendry and Brienne coursed in his heart. Strike true, strike fair, but strike. He lifted his trumpet once more. Captain, you claim peace decays without struggle. Very well. Let us struggle, but with craft, not carnage. Tomorrow dawn, bring your strongest two-masted ketch. We race you to the Isles of Merling Rock. Winner sets the terms of next council. Loser binds themselves to charter law for 1 full year. No bowstrings, no blades. Only sails, currents, and cunning. Medim. A hush clamped the decks. The captain's eyes burned across the foam. She conferred with mates, then threw back her head. Accepted. At dawn. She snapped fingers. Her ship backed water, falling away like a specter into night rain. Peacebringer's crew exhaled as one. Yoren lowered bow. Jane stared at Willem. You wager realm on a race? He managed a thin grin. Better a gamble of oars than a guarantee of death. Besides, he gestured at her, we carry Stormdart lineage in every plank. Let us prove its worth to those who scorn talk. Storm's End blazed with lamplight when ravens brought news of the dawn race. Scholars scoured logs for Merling Rock's tricky shoals. Fleet carpenters rechecked Peacebringer's keel for fouling. In the amphitheater beneath the drum tower, the hall of debate carved where catapults once crouched, delegates wrangled over contingencies. What if the race turned ambush? What if masts splintered? What if the Indigo captain cheated treaty? Yet, amid the swirl, an undeniable thrill quickened. The realm had not faced a contest this bold since Brienne's tourney compromise. Perhaps, some whispered, a test was overdue. Night turned like a grindstone. Before first light, Peacebringer slipped anchor, every yard of sail freshly tarred, rigging tuned to a hum. Willem manned the tiller. Jane took bow watch. Joran and his Vale marksmen perched in the tops, arrows bundled but strung for deterrence only. As rosy bands streaked east, the Indigo ketch appeared abreast. Lean, wicked fast hull, crew bristling. Upon her foremast fluttered a new banner, Indigo Field, a single stag antler picked out in silver thread. A sign of respect, or challenge. Drums beat. Sails snapped. Race began. Across 30 leagues the vessels dueled like duelists with invisible rapiers, trading overtakes, luffing to steal wind, cutting tight across each other's wake. The seas calmed as if cowed by their fervor. Wave crests glassing under a sun that climbed unblinking. At mid-course the ketch shot through a gap between reef fangs where Peacebringer dared not follow. Willem bore wide, trusting charts that promised countercurrent. For an agonizing hour, the Westerosi ship lagged a full quarter league. Then Jane shouted. A tide bore them forward like a slingstone, currents harnessed by Stormdart keel. They surged. Spray-sleeting faces, overtaking the ketch by a spear's length. Merling Rock loomed, a claw of basalt, home to seals and legends of half-men. Around its base churned deadly rips. Safe entry demanded a precise tack against echoing winds. Indigo captain aimed straight for the lee side, gambling on tight turn. Peacebringer mirrored. Mast to mast they carved crescents of foam. Hulls heeling so far sailors could skim fingertips through sea. Sharks scattered. Gulls shrieked. The world narrowed to canvas. Rope. Heartbeats. At the final reach, Willem ordered mainsail eased, catching a sudden gust deflected from the rock face, a maneuver dreamed by Gendry in old notations and perfected by Jean's apprentices. Peacebringer leapt forward, crossed an invisible line between two weather-beaten pillars. A horn bellowed from their bow. Victory. Silence followed, broken only by winded breaths. The Ketch's crew stared across water, some cheering despite themselves. Challenge met in honest craft earns grudging awe. Their captain stood at rail, braid beads glinting. She raised fist, pounded heart, bowed. Willem returned the salute. Both vessels dropped anchor in the calm behind Merling Rock. Crews boarded small boats, rowing to a narrow shingle beach. There, under watch of gulls and tide pools, they convened. The Indigo captain introduced herself in clipped Westerosi. Shai Tal of the Tide Carvers. She gestured to her officers, mercenaries, escaped slaves, seekers of edge. We reject guild charters that trade vigor for comfort. We sail to sharpen dull worlds. Willem spoke of realms rebuilt from blade chips, of forges where children hammered coins of friendship. Edge is good, he said, if it shapes, not slashes. He offered Peacebringers stores, food, cloth, without strings. Shaital accepted but demanded voice in Congress. So long as you let yourself be seated among many, not above, Willem said. They clasped wrists upon it. The treaty scrap they drafted on tide-stiff parchment bore 2 seals, Stag Olive and Sea Razor, equal halves. Shaital pledged her fleet to escort trade along Jade Gates, bridging rifts that had spawned her rebellion. In turn, Congress promised open harbors for tide carvers and a festival of maritime games each decade. Contests of sail, or even dive fishing, where craft, not war, would test skill. The race's legend sprinted home on albatross wings. Crowded taverns recited every tack and gust. Apprentice forges forged miniature Ketch models by torchlight. More importantly, coastal villages once jittery at rumor of raiders now greeted tide carvers' sails with wary smiles. Fear had been melted, recast. Autumn's gold breathed across fields from the Reach to the Dornish marches, but in the high meadows north of the Neck, a frost arrived unseasonably early, glazing barley before it could be stripped. Steward Willem dispatched aerial gondolas laced with warming braziers to haul seeds south. Yet the loss stung. At Congress, northern delegates argued for grain priority. Dornish envoys countered that blister rot had ruined fig orchards and water should not funnel north alone. Voices sharpened. Enter Dahlia of Harlaw, Asha Greyjoy's grandniece, now fleet mistress of the Iron Conclave. On floor of Wind's Heart, she produced casks of pickled cod, fruits preserved in rum, mead sweet as honey glaze. The Isles suffered little frost, she said. Take our surplus. Next season your fields repay us in flax to weave our sails. Her matter-of-fact generosity diffused the room. Years back, Ironborn would have charged double. Now they bartered trust for future trade. Still, an undercurrent of unease crept through populace. Tales of unnatural weather, shifting stars. Maester archivists traced patterns to whisper of a long-forgotten celestial cycle, yet lacked full data. Willem authorized a grand observatory atop the Stormland's tallest ridge, staffed equally by northern star watchers and Dornish sky priests. Like Gendry's forge, its dome would be open to any child who dared to ask why moons waxed red certain years. 2 winters later, a comet indeed rippled scarlet across black. Some spread panic, omen of fractured peace. But the observatory published tables showing such comets recurred every 7 generations. Icons of renewal, not ruin. The Charter Age had lasted just long enough to witness one. Perhaps that was its test. Crowds journeyed to ridges and, wrapped in shared blankets, watched the crimson arc burn overhead like molten iron drawn from cosmic fire. On the night of greatest brilliance, Willem stood with Shai Tal, Jean Farrow, and a gaggle of orphans from King's Landing street schools. He recalled forging his first iron nail beneath Master Farrow's tutelage. Fire, fear, exhilaration. He felt the same awe now. One orphan tugged his sleeve. Lord, do you think the comet will fall? He crouched. If it ever does, what do we do with fallen fire? The boy pondered, then brightened. Hammer it into shields for everyone. Willem laughed. Exactly. A lesson Master Gendry taught long ago. Shaital smiled at orange glow dancing in children's eyes. Edge that shapes, not slashes. 20 more years turned, smoothing old grudges like water-smooth stones. The Jade Gates opened fully. Tide carvers established lighthouse stations bearing hybrid symbols. Sky roads spider-webbed mountain passes. In Old Town, the Healing Academy discovered vinegar poultices that halted plague in its tracks. Free copies of the remedy manual were dispatched aboard every charter ship. Yet decline can creep so slowly even observant minds miss its footfalls. Beneath prosperity, some artisans muttered that merit had drowned beneath committees. They craved single strong patrons again. A loose brotherhood of smiths and traders met in backrooms, stirring for focused hands, code for centralized power. They argued that by splitting decisions among countless voices, the realm wasted metal on needless nails. One evening their hidden moot burned bright oil late. In that glow they forged a signet, a clenched fist around shattered olive twigs. They plotted to seize the next festival of hammers, dramatically rejecting distribution grants and demanding stewardship elections be paused, until efficiencies restored. When Congress learned of pamphlets, many dismissed them. But Jean Farrow, now gray-haired and keen-eyed, sensed hot coals under ash. She sought Willem, whose beard too had silvered, and urged vigilance. Festival opened beneath clear skies. Contestants set pavilions. Children thronged tilt yards where water-wheel models spun. At midday's height the Brotherhood marched in, 300 strong, fists twig sigils on cloaks. They disrupted a pottery demonstration, shouting slogans. Jane intercepted, hammer hanging at her belt, not as threat, but memory. "Speak," she said. "This festival listens." Their spokesman spat at the plaque of ships she'd forged decades prior. "Peace bred weakness. Our steel dulled by talk. We claim forge rights for strong alone." Murmurs flitted through crowd. Some youths admired the Brotherhood's crisp discipline. Others bristled. Willem stepped onto platform, arms raised. "Friends, the forge is loud but not deaf. Show us your design for better realm." "Diane," the spokesman brandished melted raw iron lumps. "Our design needs no charter." He hurled lump at Jane's feet. Sparks kissed cobbles. "Revoke quotas. Abolish sky tax. Crown a single master smith to guide production." Willem surveyed onlookers. Potters, farmers, healers, sailors, tide carvers, scholars, ironborn, free folk. Many looked baffled, some intrigued. He knew the moment to strike true. He picked up the hot lump with tongs, carried it to an anvil at field's edge. He began hammering, steady, measured. Each clang rang over festival till hush draped tents. As iron flattened, he spoke. "A single hammer rings loud, but 100 hammers shape wonders too vast for one man's anvil." He set down bar now stretched thin like ribbon. This was chaos. Now it holds form. He handed tongs to the Brotherhood spokesman. "Your turn. Shape it better." Cornered, the man swung too hard. Metal bent uneven, cracked. Sneers wavered. Willem addressed the gathering. "We are not weak. We are many. Together, we temper error. Lighten blows." He gestured skywards where gondolas drifted bearing grain, where tide carver cutters escort convoys. None wrought by one fist. A child near front, same orphan grown to potter's apprentice, raised voice. "Peace is our master smith." Laughter and cheers erupted. Isolated, the Brotherhood faltered. Some flung cloaks aside, others slunk away. Later, in council chambers, Jane asked if rebellion now snuffed. Willem replied, "Embers remain. But every festival, every forge, offers them tongs to join, not burn." Then so. A century rounded since Gendry first laid aside crown. Storm's End prepared centennial bell cast of mixed metals gifted from every province. Silver of the Vale, copper of Sunspear, tin of Lannisport, iron smelted from nails of old warships. Its voice would toll 73 tones on Charter Day. On the eve, an aged Samwell Tarley, face round still but hair thin as parchment, presented the final volume of his chronicles to Congress. He had titled it, "The Living Anvil." Seated on marble benches etched with vines, delegates listened as he read the last paragraph. "And should storms gather anew, remember the lesson of iron, that only through alternation of fire and water does steel achieve strength. Let discord heat our convictions. Let discourse cool our tempers. And let the hammer of empathy strike until each flaw is drawn out, each alloy made sound. In this way, peace, like the best blade, will hold an edge that slices time itself. When he finished, not even Tyrion's great grandniece could muster a jest. They rose, offering a silent standing ovation. The first in Congress history. Dawn broke on Charter Day. Atop Storm's End's highest tower, the new bell shimmered amber in sunrise. Willem Waters, stoop yet steady, pulled the braided cord. A note deep as ocean thunder rippled across land and sea. 72 more peals followed, each distinct, each carrying timbre of province, whose metal laced the bronze. In far-flung hamlets, folk paused to listen. In foreign courts across narrow sea, emissaries marked the hour. The last tone faded into gull cry. Willem released cord, hands trembling from age and awe. He thought of Gendry's first hammer blow, Brienne's steady gavel, the race against Shy-Tal, the comet's arc, the countless unknown people who had chosen compromise over conquest. He felt them all ring inside him. A breath of wind caressed his cheek. Or perhaps phantom of a smith's big hand offering thanks. He smiled into rising light. The realm would face tempests again. Stars would shift. Seas would eat coasts. Hearts would harden and soften. But with every cycle, someone would remember to pick up iron and shape it into something better. And somewhere, beneath a market awning or in a mountaintop forge, a young apprentice would raise a hammer, feel its weight, and know that the first strike, true and fair, could echo for 100 years more.